America deserved 9/11, dude. It. I'm saying it.
It will inevitably turn Israel into a nation that is entirely comprised of messianic, inbred, ultra-Orthodox psychopaths with a nuclear arsenal. Mao Zedong is one of the great leaders of this world. I finally framed the Cutie Cinderella newspaper from 9/11, the morning of 9/12, the newspaper right there.
That is controversial and far-left streamer Hasan Piker, who has built a platform on anti-American, anti-Israel rhetoric and has amassed a massive following in doing so. But who is Hasan Piker and how did he get so much influence? Let's take a look. Hasan Piker is born in New Jersey to Turkish parents, but raised in Istanbul. He has family ties. You'll recognize this guy. He entered political media as the Young Turks co-founder's nephew. That's Cenk Uygur, who you remember very much following in the footsteps. Hasan Piker starts building an online empire, turning his daily stream that everybody from Rokan to Abdul El-Sayed wants to be on, AOC, and he turned these live streams into an audience of 10 million followers. Part of why he is so front and center as a voice of young Democrats. His political access with major progressive stars appear on his show. They're literally it's like Joe Rogan trying to get on his show if you are a far left progressive Democrat. His radical record, though, cannot be denied. He's called religious Jews inbred, defended Hamas, continues to do that, and apologized after saying that America deserved 9/11. In the latest firestorm, addressed college Democrats in a Mao-style suit. Look at that. And it's interesting, guys, because just think the list of pro-America conservative speakers that have been booted from college campuses across the country is too long to list. It would take a half an hour to lay them out. And yet here, college Democrats want this highly controversial anti-American, anti-Semitic person to address them.
Well, so how did Hasan Piker become a leading voice for young liberals? Well, our next guest is a young Democrat who's calling on his generation for platforming Piker. He says that it is reprehensible. He's also the president of Young Democrats of Massachusetts. Jack Perenick joins us now. Jack, welcome to the show. So you say that young Democrats should be careful about, as you call it, platforming Hasan Piker, inviting him to universities. Why do you say that? Or should we have more open discussion and on both sides? Or you're saying he shouldn't be allowed on campus?
Well, I totally believe in going places where you have to talk to people that don't necessarily think the way that you do. That's why I'm here on Fox News this morning. But I think the most important thing to understand about Hasan Piker is that he is someone who is just totally reprehensible. But he does have this large following. And I think one of the most important things that Democrats can do, go out there, talk to his followers, talk to the people who are disaffected with both parties and are listening to him. But platforming him, I think, was something that was almost immediately met with severe backlash. Why do you think he's popular, Jack? There's a lot of people right now who don't feel comfortable embracing either party establishment, and we see that on the left and the right. I think Hasan Piker sounds a lot more like radical figures on the right, like Nick Fuentes, than he does like a lot of Democrats. And I think he said it best himself. He came to this convention to speak and used half of his time defending why almost everyone hates him, and the other half of his time attacking the Democratic Party. And I think that that's the kind of speech that isn't helpful to the Democrats, but it is helpful to get an even larger number of people disaffected. But I think that the desire to go out and reach out to the people who are listening to him right now is a good one. And the college Dems, if they continue that approach of talking to people who are very skeptical of the Democratic Party, are on a good path to regain more supporters.
Well, Jack, first of all, we are grateful to you for coming on and talking about this, and we appreciate your willingness to engage. It's a very important part of our country. And I get what you're saying about how he there are a lot of people in the world who feel disaffected, but this guy talks about very specific things. What is it that from a lot of young people, obviously, what is it that draws people to the specific things that Hasan Piker talks about that we all find so repellent?
Yeah, I mean, I think so many people have lost faith in the ability of the American political system to affect change that his calls for a revolution become appealing because people feel that that's the only way. And I think that this goes to the need for Democrats to really show that they're delivering. But I think, you know, Hasan in particular, part of the reason why he's just such an awful speaker and a messenger for this voice, you know, particularly for college Democrats, one of the things I heard a lot about there was his objection to, you know, this is someone who thinks date rape on college campuses is hilarious and something to be joked about. And it was a message that, particularly to young people, you know, it was really helpful to so many of the people who didn't know who he was before. You know, seeing him come out dressed as Mao was really helpful to a lot of people to know that this was not someone serious that was there to talk. And it was, you know, people streamed out of the room. You can't see it in that shot there, but the people streamed out of the room so much so they had to close the doors to the auditorium to stop the mass departure. Four whole state delegations walked out in their entirety. And it was funny that, you know, congressional candidates in R+30 districts got 10 times the applause that he did because people kind of know that he's a hackster, not to be taken seriously.
But does that matter? The fact that he is a fraud, does that matter if you've got millions of people who are listening to him and following him?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You have to go out and talk to the people who think that, you know, right now there is no hope in the Democratic Party. So they're looking for figures like Piker who are talking about the, you know, ability to affect broad change. I think the reality is, though, that there could not be anyone less politically influenceable right now. And it's funny, even in, you know, I've talked to a lot of people. You know, I called his comments reprehensible. A friend of mine reminded me that Zoran Mondami said the same thing about his comments, and I really think that he's, you know, been a very successful person in uniting the Democratic Party against his anti-Semitic and hateful comments.
Well, and Jack, you know, as you mentioned, he said in his speech to the Democrats, college Democrats, that he is coming for the establishment, and with such a following, as Charlie points out, we'll see where this goes. Jack Perenick, thank you for joining us. We want to have you come back as we continue to follow this. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
All right.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.